even though you're critical of the environmental movement as it exists right now, you're not anti-environmentalism.
No, not at all. And I think that everybody cares about the environment. You live here in New Mexico or in Washington State or so many other places. People talk about how beautiful it is, whether they're forests or the high desert or whatever. So we all care about the environment. The question is, how do you make the environment better? What can you do? Things that really work, things that follow the science, follow the economics, and then respect other values like personal freedom and prosperity and things like that. So I'm a free market environmentalist, which means I care deeply about the environment, but want to do it in such a way that respects all those other things.
So, and you say that the free market is the best way to protect the environment.
Right. So the free market, so much of what you see actually done, the benefits that we have, the improvements that we've seen in the environment come from new technology, come from people trying to do more with less. So that's at the heart of free market incentives. Mm-hmm. You don't want to waste energy because that's money out of your pocket. Mm-hmm. You want to find ways to be more energy efficient. Electric cars, the reason that we see electric cars is because of technology from batteries and cell phones and laptops. That's what really made them possible, not government subsidies and preferences. And so often when you find technologies and you say, did this come from government or did it come from the free market? The free market's the answer. And yet we overlook that as a real tool to help the environment again and again.
And you say that the hybrid car that that's so popular now, that's a product of the free market.
Right. So the hybrids were created in the 90s by Toyota and Honda, who wanted to sell to people who wanted fuel-efficient vehicles. Vehicles didn't put out so much CO2, and they found a market. This was long before government subsidies came along. The United States government really only started giving rebates and subsidies in about 2001, 2003, a couple years after hybrids went on the market. Politicians are very smart. They know a hot thing when they see it, and so they'll jump on the bandwagon, but they're very bad at predicting in advance what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. The free market is great because it tests all sorts of things. You have incentives to sell products to people who have disposable income, and trying to get that disposable income has created a lot of things. It created the electric car, hybrids, but also there's a wide variety of plastic bottles that are now made out of plants and other things because people are worried about buying those plastic bottles. They want something that is renewable and things like that. So as long as you can create that market incentive for those sorts of things, there'll be people who create the technology to take advantage of those things.
What would you say, though, to some of those politicians that you point the finger at who say, well, what's wrong with at least giving an incentive? We give tax incentives to oil companies, coal companies. Why not give environmental incentives?
Well, I don't want to give incentives to anybody. I think we should level the playing field. But I also think people should pay for the impact. So if you're having an impact on the environment, I don't want people putting sewage in the stream. I want them for paying that cost. And that's the essence of the free market, right? Is that you have the freedom to do what you want, but if you have a negative impact on other people or on the environment, you pay those costs. And as long as those costs are built in, then you're going to get better outcomes. And the problem with politicians is that they choose things like ethanol. Well, even Al Gore now says that subsidies for ethanol was a bad thing. Ethanol turned out in many cases to use more energy than gasoline, have more sort of traditional air pollution like particulate matter and things like that. And it was because they jumped on the bandwagon. It was trendy, and politicians wanted to be trendy, and so they chose a bad outcome. It was worse for the environment than actually doing nothing, and we wasted a tremendous amount of money doing something that was doing more harm than good. That's the problem, is that politicians will point to the few times they got it right, but they'll want to ignore all the times they got it wrong.
What about the people in the environmental movement who, once you utter the words free market, freak out?
Well, I think that's silly. The free market is concerned about the allocation of scarce resources. You don't want to use any more resources than you have to because it costs you money. Farmers are not going to put more fertilizer on the ground than they have to because they have to pay for that fertilizer. If you're concerned about scarce resources, then why not use the study of the allocation of scarce resources to help you deal with that problem? The idea that you can pick and choose and force people into doing what you want them to do, it just doesn't work, and we see that time and time again. So if you really care about the environment, why would you set aside a tool that is tremendously powerful, if not for other reasons? And that, I think, is where the environmental community has gone off track, is that what guides their decisions more than anything else these days is the desire to feel like they're doing good for the environment and look good. And so they choose policies that maximize the social benefits rather than the scientific and economic and environmental benefits for the environment. So that's why they get rid of they don't care about the free market. It's because it's hard to take credit for things that came out of the free market. It's easy to take credit for things that you forced other people to do and say, I did a good thing. That makes you feel good, even if the environment doesn't get any better. There are a lot of people who have utopian visions of how it ought to be, but reality always has a way of getting in the way of what those visions are. So if you truly care about the environment, you'll be realistic, right? You'll say, all right, we can't get from here to there in 1 year, so let's get from here to there in 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years. Let's take some steps. Let's move away from coal to natural gas, which cuts CO2 per unit of energy in half. Let's go from cars to hybrids, and then down the road to maybe zero-emission vehicles or other things like that. It's a process, and what we see is that the way that we make environmental improvements is not by big leaps. When you look at the data, you don't see big improvements. What you see is incremental, year after year improvements that come from people finding better ways to do it. And that's what you have to commit yourself. And as long as you commit yourself to recognizing that the way the environment gets better is by everybody making tiny incremental improvements rather than trying to hit a home run every time that you're at the plate, then you really care about the environment. You can deny that data all you want, but ultimately it's not going to help the environment.
Todd Myers, thank you very much.
Thank you.